Hi, and welcome back to the 10th section of the React for Designers course. My name is Meng, and I'm here today to tell you all about Contentful and GraphQL. Now, a lot of websites have blogs, portfolio items, and any kind of content that is repeatable and that can be managed outside of the development server. So you don't have to publish your code every single time that there's an update on your website. So we're gonna learn how to use that data from a CMS like Contentful and bring that data inside the website. On top of that, we're gonna use GraphQL, which is a very simple way to query that data. The portion that we're gonna build today is the footer. And I know it's very simple, but we're almost done with this course. You know, we've learned how to create cells and all that stuff. And I just don't wanna repeat this portion. I just want to go to the finishing line, which is the footer. And of course, you can apply the same techniques back into the cells or the cards if you wish. So let's get started. So first things first, we should start simple and take a look at what is GraphQL. We're going to go to the config file and we're going to add some data to our config file. And that's going to be in the site metadata. So the second data is going to be about the description of the website. So we're going to put here, I'm going to paste a long text, but feel free to use your own text for your own website. I'm going to do Option Z to wrap, and I'm going to add keywords as well. So keywords, and I'm going to paste this. Now, what this is basically what we're going to put into the header of our site, and it's going to serve for the SEO, so search engine optimization, so that Google can find us using these keywords that we have and the description as well as the title. Now, the other thing about Gatsby is that we have this really neat place where we can test the GraphQL data. So we're going to go to the same address and then slash and then underscore 3 times and then GraphQL. So this is our little playground. But because we've just updated the content of our website, we need to restart the server using Gatsby develop again so that it can cache the content and it can regenerate it for GraphQL. So let's go and restart our server. We're gonna go back to terminal and do Control-C to stop our server, and then do Gatsby develop again to start it again. And here we're gonna wait a little bit and it's gonna tell us that it's successful. But also notice that we have 2 links here. We have the GraphQL and the local host, which is for testing. So we're gonna use this link and put it to our address here. Make sure to refresh. Now, if you want to see what data is available to you, you go to Docs, click Root Query Type, and here we're going to go to Site Metadata, and you can see that we have access to title, description, and keywords. So we have title, and then we can search for keywords. So if you click play, it's going to give you the title and the keyword as data. And if you add another one, such as the description as well, so right before that description, click play, and then we have all the data that we need. So it has a new data. We just need to start applying it to our website. Let's go to index inside layout, and this is where we're going to set up the keywords and the description. But before we do that, we have to make sure that we're actually querying the right data. So far we have the title, but we don't have the description and the keywords. So we add this, and then we can put it here. So we're gonna put data, site metadata, and then I'm just gonna word wrap this first, and then I'm gonna get the description. The same thing for the content of the keywords. So data, site metadata, and then the keywords. And then if you save, you're not going to see anything here. That's because it's only happening in the keywords inside the head tag. So if you look here, meta description and keyword, it has the content that we have from Gatsby config. And that's exactly what we wanted. So now that we have learned some basic GraphQL, we can now apply a real database from Contentful. So now we're gonna go here, go to contentful.com, and then click login or try for free. Obviously, you're gonna have to log in either with GitHub, which is what I recommend. Afterwards, we go to the top left and then click on add space. But if not, you probably already have a space. But for me, I'm gonna start from scratch. Select the free one, and let's say we're gonna set it to my app. Confirm, create the space. And now we're ready to create a content type. Now a content type is just, for example, for the footer or a link, that's a content type. So we're gonna create one and we're gonna name it link, create. And then now we have the structure for the content. So you know that the link usually has a title. So create that. And then we also want to have a URL. So URL and create that. And save. Go to space home. And now we can create the content. We're gonna create real content that's gonna be used in the website. So let's start with home, obviously. So home, and then the URL is gonna be just slash. We publish that, we go back, we create more. So I'm just gonna fast forward this part. Okay, so now we're ready to set up our API. We're gonna go to settings and click on API keys. And then we're gonna click on add API key. So the two data that we need here is the space ID and the content delivery API access token. Now we're gonna go back to our website and set that up. First of all, we're gonna need to install Gatsby source Contentful. It's a library. So control and tilde, and then we're gonna write npm install -s gatsby source contentful and enter. This is going to install the library that we need to set up Contentful on our app. So once everything is installed, we're gonna add that to our plugins inside the config file of Gatsby. Now I'm gonna put this, because should be an array, right? So I'm gonna put this in its own line, in between the brackets, add another comma, and then I'm gonna write a curly brackets, and then put resolve colon, single quotes, Gatsby source Contentful, and then comma, options, colon, curly brackets, space ID, so space ID using camel case, and then column, single quotes, and this is where I'm gonna get the space ID value. Copy and paste, comma, access token, camel case, single quote, and this is where I'm gonna get the access token. And save. Now I'm gonna close the integrated terminal, and I'm gonna check if my data is working. But first, I need to restart my server yet again because it has to recache the server, get that content from Contentful. So I'm gonna go to my terminal, and here again, Control-C to stop the server, and then you can use the up arrow to repeat the last command in terminal. So Gatsby develop, enter, and it's gonna refresh the content from Contentful. Looks like we're all good. I'm gonna switch back, go to GraphQL, and refresh. So I'm gonna refresh this. Go to my docs, click on root query type, and we see that we have some values from Contentful, and that's definitely a good sign. We just need to start querying that content. So let's do that. The structure of Contentful is slightly different. So I'm gonna replace site, and I'm gonna start typing all Contentful link, and then curly brackets, and for every single content type, we have to type edges, curly brackets, and then node, curly brackets, and then here we can find the title or the URL. So that's basically it. You click play, and then voila, you have all the content from your Contentful database. That's really cool. Okay, now we're ready to create the footer component. We're gonna go to Components, the folder, right click on it, new file, and then footer.js. Here, we're gonna import React, of course, and then we're gonna import style component for later. And we're gonna set the footer component. So const footer is equal to parenthesis, arrow, and then parenthesis again, and create an empty div. We're gonna export that to default. Now we want to bring our data to our component, but the problem is we can't create a GraphQL query inside a component. So what we need to do is to either put that query inside the layout or a page. Because it's a footer, we're gonna go to the index, and we're gonna create a query first. So we're going to bring a second query on top of site, and we're gonna copy and paste this. So all Contentful link, and we're gonna bring it right here, right before the last one, like this. And now we have the site query and also the all Contentful link query. And we can already start testing that data right here. Right after children, we're gonna set curly brackets and then data and then all Contentful link. And then all of them have edges, and that's what we're gonna map. And then parentheses, and then for each of the edge, we're gonna have edge, arrow, parentheses, enter. This is where we're gonna bring each link. So the tag a href is equal to curly brackets, and then each of these edge have a node and then a title or a URL. So .node .url, and then close, and then the name of the link, and then close the a tag. Inside the curly brackets for the content of our link, we're gonna set to edge.node.title. Now let's test it. Let's go here, and we can see after I save, I have all my links next to each other, and those links are from Contentful. That's really cool. Now the thing is, we want to pass that data to our footer component. So what we need to do is to bring our footer component, so open bracket, footer, and then click on auto import. And then here, we're basically gonna pass the data equal curly brackets data, and then close your footer. Now we're gonna move our collection of links here. So we're gonna select all of this, cut it, and then go to footer, and then paste it here, and then save. But see, there's nothing that's happening because the data doesn't exist. It needs to be passed to our footer component from the props. So we're gonna have curly brackets here, and we're gonna type data, and then save, refresh, and now it works. At this point, we're going to properly style our footer. So let's take a look at the design. So this is our footer, and we have the link element and some text as well as a tweet button. So what we're gonna do is to organize and structure the footer, starting with a footer group, and close that. Inside the footer group, I'm gonna have a text. And by the way, you don't need to be as explicit anymore because we're using style components. If we were using a class name for CSS, that's where we need to be explicit because the class have to exist everywhere inside our application. But because it's a style component, it's isolated, and the name can be very general, such as text. As long as you don't import something that's called text that doesn't conflict with this one, you can have a pretty generic name right here. That makes your code much simpler. I'm gonna put the text here, and feel free to use any text you want. And then I'm gonna put also a button, so close that button, and then put the text tweet. And then I'm gonna put a link group, and this is where I'm gonna move the content of our links, but only selecting the curly brackets inside the div. So delete the div afterwards, and then move everything else right here. I'm just gonna make this bigger because the code looks weird. And now we're ready to style our component. So const footer group is equal to style div and then backticks, and then const text is equal to style dot p backticks, const button is equal to style dot button backticks, and then const link group is equal to style the div backticks. Now let's start styling the whole thing. So the footer group, we're gonna start with the background, and the background color can be picked here. It's gonna be this one. Then the padding, we're gonna add a little bit of padding from the top and bottom. So if you save, you have this so far. We're gonna change the text. So it's gonna be font size 24 pixel, font weight 600, color, again we're gonna use Figma. Put it like this, and then it's gonna be max width, so we don't want this to exceed 500 pixels. And on top of that, we're gonna set the margin to 0 auto. Next, let's style the button. The button should look something like this, and in fact we can actually go to Figma and go to the code and get some of the code for us so that we don't spend so much time dealing with the background and stuff like that. So we're gonna copy and paste this code, including the background, the box shadow, and the border radius, save, and you can see that it's very small. We have the gradient there, but we need to customize more. So color white, obviously, and then we don't want to have any border. We also want to have a padding of 16 pixel and 60 pixel. So 16 top and then 60 left and right. And then we're gonna set the font weight to 600. Save that. Let's not forget to change the font size to 24. And it's starting to look pretty good now. But while we're here, we might as well set the grid so that we have some padding between each element. So display grid in the footer group, and then grid gap to 20 pixel. So now we have some padding. But the problem that we have here is that when we use grid, the button seems to be taking the whole space. So we're gonna fix that by going to the button and also do justify self to center. And that fixes our issue. Now it's time to style our links here. So the link group is gonna make sure that we're gonna have columns and rows. So we're gonna use a width of 500 pixels. We're gonna margin it 50 and auto to center. We're gonna use a grid, of course, and we're gonna set the template, so grid template columns, to repeat 2 and using 1 fraction each. So now it's doing this, and that means that we have 2 columns and it's split evenly. We're gonna use a grid gap of 10 pixel. It's looking pretty good, but we're missing a little text here, which is a copyright text. And I want to show you how to pass children elements to a component. Usually you're limited to passing some basic data like the text. But what we want to pass is anything that reside inside a tag. So what we're going to do is we're going to include children here, and then here we're going to do curly brackets and children. Now let's go back to the index file of the layout, and here you can see that my footer is a close tag. I'm gonna open it again and close from here, but inside that I can put anything I want, right? I can put a new button, I can put HTML. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're gonna, let's say, take this text and we're gonna limit to, let's say, from here. We're gonna pass a link. So in order to pass a link that sends an email, you have to write it like this: mail to, then column support@designcode.io. And so you save this. When you go to the component, it's gonna receive all of that data that's inside the tag here. So as you can see, that's exactly what's happening. Now I just need to put all of this stuff inside a copyright style component. So I'm gonna copy and paste this. And now I just need to style the copyright. So const copyright is equal to style div and put some colors. So let's say it's gonna be this color with a max width of 500, a margin of 0 auto, and a padding of 0.20. And voila, we have all the elements that is passed as children, and that's really neat. The last thing I want to discuss, which is super important, is how to sort the data from Contentful. As you can see here, the ordering is kind of wrong. It starts with the last one that we included. So we're going to go back to index, and we're going to go to all Contentful link, and we're going to add parentheses, sort, column, and in curly brackets. Inside the curly brackets, we're going to have field, column, and it's going to have created at. So this is a field that we're going to use. This is automatically generated. It's going to sort by date, and then order, so comma first, and then order, column, ASC, which means ascending. And on top of that, we also need to query the created at as well. So if we save, it orders your content properly. What is important to note is that GraphQL is a huge topic, and this is something that you should definitely learn more about. I'm definitely going to include some resources for you to learn more about GraphQL. So let's go back to our footer and maybe just add some hover states. So starting with the link, right at the link group, we're going to add a, and here let's have a transition of 0.8 second and have a hover state that goes to black. So color black. So if I save and I mouse over here, it's working. We also have the button. It's going to be very fast. So we're going to use the and sign, column, hover, and then we're going to set the box shadow to 0, 20 pixel, 40 pixel, RGBA, and then 0, 0, 0, 0.15. And then we're going to set the transform to translate Y minus 3 pixel. So when I mouse over, it's floating a little bit. I just need to add the transition to 0.8 second using a cubic Bezier of 0.2, 0.8, 0.2, and then 1. So this is what I have so far, and everything is working exactly the way that I want it. Now we've just learned a lot of stuff today. We've learned about GraphQL, we've learned about setting up Contentful, setting up a space, and then the content type, as well as adding fields, and setting up or config using Gatsby source Contentful. We had a space ID, an access token, and then we created a component for which we can add that query and use all that data from the GraphQL interface right here. And then we learn how to pass a lot of data from index, including the children data, but also the data from the props. So using that data, we were able to loop through all the links and create our beautiful footer right here. I hope you're starting to realize the superpowers that you're gaining today. And as a result, you can build amazing apps with dynamic content that exists from an API or from a CMS like Contentful, so that you don't have to push code every single time that you need to update the content of your website. In the next lesson, we're going to learn about deploying your site so that anyone can see it. So I'll see you soon.